All right, welcome everyone. I hope you had a nice lunch. We're going to keep you awake. I know that food's going to probably make you tired a little bit, but we're going to keep you awake. We have another great session with Wells Fargo, and this is around capacity planning and building a successful capacity planning practice with one of the largest U.S. banks around today and their success around that. So just for quick introductions, and this looks a little bit different. Maybe you remember this from the keynote, but we're going to have just kind of a round-robin panel discussion. Nothing scripted. We're just going to talk about the success that Wells Fargo's had around their capacity planning practice. Where do they start? Where do they want to go? Et cetera, et cetera. So I first want to introduce Charles Dixon, Technology Manager with Wells Fargo. If you guys were here just maybe a few minutes ago, you saw him accept the award, one of the innovation awards for all the success they've had around building innovation and then fueling that innovation with many of the CA products they use today. Next is Christopher Lee. Chris Lee.
Thank you.
Application Systems Engineer with Wells Fargo. He works very closely with the CA capacity management product. He'll dive deeper into exactly how he uses the product to maintain right-sized infrastructure for very revenue-driven applications. And at the far right is Mr. John Ashby, Senior Services Architect with CA Technologies, works very closely with many of our CA capacity management customers today. He has a lot of war stories around a lot of what customers are dealing with today with challenges around capacity planning, and he'll shed some light on that. Here's a quick agenda. You're going to see this as we go through the slides. And I'm going to shut up here in a second. I'm going to sit down, but I just wanted to welcome everyone once again to the application economy. Everything we do today is tied to these devices here. If I'm at the grocery store and I have a grocery cart full of groceries, I pull out my phone, I transfer money right away if I'm short. If I can't do that, I'm walking from my bank. Everything we do, socializing, buying, selling, all through applications today. This session is around right-sizing your infrastructure to support those critical applications. Infrastructure is no longer an IT decision, it's a business decision driving predictive. You can have that crystal ball, predictive outcomes. All right, so our first topic of discussion here is Wells Fargo's business and the IT challenges they came upon when starting to build their capacity management practice. So I'm going to turn it over to Charles.
Thanks, Jeremy. So I guess probably most people know Wells Fargo. We're the largest mortgage lender in the nation and one of the top 4 banks in the U.S. And, you know, like a lot of big Fortune 50 companies, we just have huge challenges with regard to scalability and the size of right-sizing our capacity and making sure we have enough capacity on the floor. It's really important to us to make sure that we plan for our peak traffic, or what we call triple witching days in banking, so that we are sure we can handle what the customer, the experience the customer is expecting when we're at our busiest. And so we'll talk a little bit maybe about the history of how we got started with Capacity Manager, but it's just been a vital tool in helping us solve that problem.
And Wells Fargo and Wachovia, one of the largest financial acquisitions, integrations of 2 financial institutions out there today. We're going to learn about how capacity planning played a major role in making that that integration between both financial institutions a success. So why don't we talk about where you began?
So actually, Chris is one of the original members of the CMAP team, and really even doing capacity planning before that. We originally had it as sort of a centralized service. Now it's a little bit more federated in our organization. But we really just needed a way to do more than back-of-the-napkin capacity planning. Probably everybody out there faces the situation where infrastructure dollars are just tighter and tighter all the time. You're right, Jeremy, it really is a business decision because they control the dollars. And we just don't have the luxury anymore of having a ton of white space or just throwing more hardware at a problem. We really have to make sure that what we're putting out will meet our customers' needs without too much white space in our data centers. So I think our journey began with the original high-performance tool, Capacity Optimizer, which was a great tool, But we found it was a very much a deep dive modeling tool. And it might take us 6 or 8 months to complete a model to the level of detail that was required by that tool. And by that time, the application had changed a great deal and the model was irrelevant. So as the product evolved, we began using Capacity Manager, which is a much more nimble product, and it allows us to do very, very quick modeling, and it's been very successful for us. I don't know if you want to add anything, Chris.
Well, yeah, I think we use the tool set there efficiently rather than quick. I mean, it still takes you a little bit of time to understand what's going on from a demand perspective. So, but from an analysis and from a predictive perspective, yeah, it's a very quick turnaround. The analytic modeling over time has just got easier and easier for us to, with the processes we use to generate forecasts, and easy to turn around a set of scenarios there. Just recently, we're looking at a technology refresh program where we're looking at, okay, do we need 60 servers? Do we need 20 servers? What's the number there? The architects who we work closely with from an infrastructure perspective, we kind of sized it saying we need 20, so we ran a couple of models and said, well, how far out can we go? Can we make a 2-year forecast? Can we go out longer? When do we actually run out of capacity? And looking at the model results in different scenarios, different hardware types, we were able to save 15, I think it was about 15 servers, 3 servers, or 5 servers per data center, and a huge amount of money just from using the analytic tools. And I turned that around in about 2 hours.
Yeah, I should probably clarify. I said it was easy because he does all the work, right? But yeah, just to add to that, Jeremy, you were bringing up our integration with Wachovia, which was the largest U.S. bank integration to date. And I remember my boss coming to me and he said, I need to know what it would take to have 25% more capacity, 50% more than everything we have, 100% more, or 200% more. He just named those 4 figures, and he said, I need it by Friday. And it was really a daunting exercise to go through, but the tool was just invaluable in helping us do that.
And you bring up a really good point. So I'm sure a lot of you out there have executive requests that they come and they say, I need to know if A, B, C, D, or E happens, what's the plan? And this is how you can predictively guarantee what the outcome of any of those plans are by using capacity planning in your business initiatives. And we're going to get more into that. So it's just, you don't just install the product and you start to see red, green, and yellow lights, right, up and down, right? This is a practice that needs to be thought about, that needs to be adopted by the entire business. Chris, can you talk a little bit more about the framework here?
Yeah, I think I'll focus on the digital channels group where I do a lot of the work at the moment. Working with Charles several years ago, I think we've been doing it for about 6 years now. We kind of came up with this framework that you see right here is how do we integrate capacity planning, forecast to mitigate risk. I mean, that's what we do. We mitigate risk from a capacity perspective. And how can we repeat it? How can we make the process relatively straightforward, repeatable, and everyone knows what we're talking about? I think at the moment we have quarterly meetings. We meet with the business partners. We look at the forecast. We look at the infrastructure forecast. We look at the technology refresh programs. That's an ongoing, quarterly basis. We look at it quarterly basis. It takes 6 or 7 weeks to do a quarterly forecast, but we're looking out 2 years at a time. We're not looking 30, 60, 90 days. That's what you can use the reports for, the trend reports for. And then we go back and validate that forecast over time and say how close are we from an accurate basis. And it kind of just is an ongoing, it's built into the system now.
I'd like to repeat that. So you said you can predictively understand how IT can support all the business initiatives coming down your way 2 years in advance, 2 years out.
Well, that's what we look to forecast.
Yep.
I mean, we have organic growth, how many customers we have, what new functionality is coming down, how does that affect the infrastructure. I mean, we're focusing definitely on infrastructure here.
And just to add to that, I mean, the reason we do it on a quarterly basis is because the business doesn't even know what it's going to do 2 years out, right? For most of us, especially in the app-driven economy, things are moving so fast. I mean, in our area at Wells Fargo, we're still largely, a waterfall development shop. We're just beginning to touch the edges of agile development around our mobile apps. But even so, the velocity of some of our channels is really, it really moves quickly. And so by building it into our life cycle and doing it every quarter, if a product manager from the business comes to us and talks about a new feature, we can put that assumption into the next model very quickly. A big example for us was, and we were kind of late to the game with this for the big banks, but when we added our mobile check capture feature, MRDC is what we call it at Wells, the adoption rate of that feature just went crazy. Yeah. And just people loved to not have to go to the bank to deposit a check anymore. And as a consequence, we had to remodel, right, and take that new assumption and that new rate of growth, but we could do that very quickly.
So supporting a very innovative application out there today by taking a picture of your check, totally gets deposited right away. The infrastructure is right-sized appropriately to handle the demand for that new innovative application. What did we say this morning? No more beer bottlenecks or something like that? We don't want beer bottlenecks in our infrastructure for these very innovative applications everyone out there is developing and putting out in front of the customers today.
Yeah. And one other just observation, I've worked with Chris for a number of years now, and one of the other major, I guess, challenges and obstacles that they deal with on a regular basis is the fact that their infrastructure, I remember asking Chris, tell me a little bit about what you own, what types of platforms, and it's pretty much, all of the above. And one of the, I guess, obstacles in working with the different platform teams is they have different methodologies, they have different views and metrics and what they look at to understand the overall health, the performance, and one of their requirements is that they have to accommodate to a multitude of different teams. So it's not just x86, it's not just physical, it's pretty much anything and everything. And one of the things that they've really done a good job, and again, my opinion in seeing what they produce on a continual basis, is that what they send out to their business owners and their application teams and the platform teams is it's crisp, it's concise, it's easy to understand, because historically a lot of modeling results would be very challenging to explain what the actual results mean. And they do a very good job in building their own internal customers so that they trust and have faith in the results that they're pushing out. So I've seen that progress and improve over the years. And even with a complex infrastructure like they have, they do a solid job of making sure that they're covered, on the various systems platforms.
Yeah, and I think the process, the whole program, if you don't have management buy-in, it's not going to go anywhere. And I think it was from the CMAP perspective, which is what we saw back there, there was a commitment from senior executives to not have any outages during the integration due to capacity. And I think that's all the different organizations understood that you're accountable for this, participate. And that's an easy thing to say and kind of dictate it, but if you don't participate, you're not going to be well looked upon.
So capacity planning provides prescriptive, predictive answers, right? But you got to start with the right question. So Chris, and even John, I'd like to talk to you, or if you could shed a little bit more light, especially Chris, around where Wells Fargo is on this table, and then maybe where some other customers, maybe John, in the other areas of this refinement methodology.
So I think, I'll go back a little bit of history there. We were first a optimizer shop. So there's obviously a methodology working with CA, the old high performance, Richard Gamark and Amy Spellman. There's a particular performance engineering methodology that we use. We'll use it here, stepwise refinement. Where do you start? What are your business questions you're trying to answer? And I think that's key. If you don't have a good business question, you can generate all these forecasts, all these models, and they're not going to tell a story. I mean, you're not really telling a story, but they're going to look at it and go, that's great. Out it goes. Oh, you produced it again. What's this telling me? How does this answer a question that I have? And I think part of the stepwise refinement is getting a good business question to answer. And when we looked at this here, we looked at we started off with the application optimization or the software scalability. That's really where we started. That's why it took 8 months to do, and with the development of the analytic modeling engine, we kind of migrated over to the system scalability model, which is what we use 95% of the time. If we need to go in depth, look at more tuning knobs, more capabilities, more deep dive, then we'll go down the optimizer path. But we primarily focus, because it gives us a repeatable, easily executable program, is that we look at the system scalability side of things from an analytic modeling perspective. And as we're dealing with production data 90% of the time, the accuracy is going to be pretty, I'd say we're within 10%, which for a model anywhere within 30% you're looking good, but I would say that we're probably within 10%, plus or minus 5% from our forecast.
I'd just like to add to something Chris said. What's key in making it successful for us is we don't have like a small team of capacity management modeling folks that are over in isolation working by themselves. Chris and the other people that are part of that team, they work with our infrastructure architects when the systems are being designed or the hardware is being procured. They work with the development teams to better understand the application itself and the code. Again, like we said before, they work with business partners to understand upcoming features. So a lot feeds into that modeling over time. And then because we do the quarterly reporting back to everyone, it just keeps that continuous loop that we saw in that earlier slide.
And John, I want to, so if we move to the second column there's a questionnaire at the bottom that says, what is the software process that may be limiting performance? So, capacity planning isn't just about the infrastructure, it's about the infrastructure supporting an application. So John, can you talk a little bit more about the second and third?
Yeah, so whenever most organizations start off, a lot of the reporting, even some of the modelings, it's very platform oriented. And one of the shifts or transitions that we've seen is that people care less about the infrastructure and more about the business service and the application itself, because that's what people and business owners think of as it relates to the organization. So I think intelligent, grouping to make sure that the reports and the information that you're providing back, it provides the context that the business service owner wants to see things in. And so, again, it's not a requirement out of the gate, but one of the things that Chris and his team, they do very well is the arrangement of the assets to make sure that the information that they're reporting back, it's relevant to those people that sign checks and their customers. And one of the things that they also do a really good job with is educating their consumers of the data to make sure that they understand what data points mean. And something that people don't necessarily think about all the time is when you begin to adopt analytic tools and simulation tools, there's an educational process that occurs because not everyone is going to trust the results, and that takes time and effort to make sure that you get buy-in, because when you start putting results out, people will say, like, well, how do we know that they're legitimate? How do we know that they're accurate? And it doesn't take too many times before, if you're inaccurate, that people stop, or they lose faith and begin to question all of the results, because you're not able to produce accurate and relevant information in the context of that's required for a specific business service or an owner.
So we talked about Wells's strategy, their methodology to begin building a practice. Let's begin. Where did we start?
So I mean, I'll just start with high level. I'll let you get into since you do the real work, right? I mean, at the highest level, we have to figure out, from an infrastructure point of view, generally, we have to figure out what is the biggest constraint, or what resource do we have to worry about with a particular platform or application. For a good deal of, we're running a lot of Java applications, and CPU is probably our biggest risk that we worry about, right? So, but again, we work with architects and developers to understand the application, make sure we're measuring the right thing. Then it's as simple as looking at what we have on the floor today that may be serving a given application, collecting the data, which is part of the tool set, right? And specifically, we collect the data during our peaks. In banking, there's other people in finance here, and we all had those triple witching days, we call them at Wells Fargo, where it's, it's the end of the month and it's a Friday and it's a payday and so on, and you really see really significant spikes in CPU usage, customer traffic, et cetera, during those times. So we look at how our servers behave under peak, under extreme load, and collecting that data is the beginning of the modeling that you do, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, without using automation to collect the metrics there, we would never get anywhere.
You spend all your time
just collecting data, trying to analyze it, and everything.
And we have a lot of customers who started out that way, weeks and weeks and weeks inside of spreadsheets or siloed performance data solutions, trying to gather all this data up to have a business service view of applications performing. Excellent. So now we got all the data. What are we going to do with it? What's it going to give us?
So this is one of my favorite slides. I mean, we have dozens of examples like this, but it's just typically what the result of our modeling might show us. If that fixed line horizontally is a threshold, you might be in a situation, you really don't want to ever be in a situation where you're above that threshold, right? I mean, and like most IT shops, we have to keep BCP in mind, disaster recovery, and we have multiple data centers, and so we have to have a certain degree of white space, of course, but we also have to think about what if we lost one data center, right? And how do we make sure we have not too much white space, but enough capacity? And so in this situation, it could be as simple as, okay, here's where we are at today, or we are going to exceed this threshold with our current footprint of hardware. So let's run a different scenario. This application is running on Oracle Big Iron hardware, Sun servers, right? So what if we, they're up for refresh this year. What if we deploy the T52s or the T54s, right? And then within the catalog of data that comes with the tool, we can look at the Spark values or various benchmark values for how servers perform, and we could say, well, if we added 12 of those in each data center, you see our utilization drop sharply there, and now we're going to have enough capacity going 12, 18 months out.
Yep. And the product comes with over 7,000 different computer configurations. If it's been built in any way, shape, or form, we can help you model on it and let you know is that the hardware you want to migrate to? How much? At what price point? What's my application going to perform like on that new hardware we're going to go at? And so, you talked about the accuracy of your models needing to be pinpoint, right? I mean, it's part.
Yeah, I mean, it's a model.
Yep, it's a model, but it's a hell of a lot closer than guessing at it, right?
Yeah, it's a lot.
But you mentioned 10% before, and I will say that the work that this team does, it's extremely close.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that helps us there on that previous slide there is we don't talk about CPU utilization because we talk about capacity utilization. And we've adopted it, and we communicate it, try to educate our end users there. When we say capacity utilization, it doesn't matter what type of hardware it is. It's a great way to identify different hardware types, different software stacks on that hardware. How's it all going to perform in a standardized manner? And I think that chart there shows that we were probably going from some Solaris-based systems down to some Linux x86 Dell boxes or something like that. But
so, Chris, tell us about this real-life example of platform migration modeling and what you found out.
Well, it's a good sign there. We're going to focus on the red line there. Part of our ongoing process, obviously, is communication with the application development teams in the business. We're always rolling out new functionality. Here we have something that didn't go too well from a communication perspective. We knew it was a new application going to be deployed. There was a release date, it rolled out there, but there wasn't a very good communication about the user demand. So we essentially went up 150% in our number of sessions overnight that we weren't planning for. But I will say that using the tools, you can see the red line where it jumps up and then it kind of stabilizes and it rolls down a little bit. But it's definitely higher than our normal peaks, and we knew the functionality was coming, but not quite how it was going to perform on the systems there. And with modeling, we were actually able to have enough capacity to handle that growth for other reasons, because we knew other projects were coming along. So we didn't take any outages, and I'll say, I know Charles, it's kind of a little bit on the next slide here about risk mitigation. we haven't had an infrastructure capacity outage for 7+ years.
Can you say that again? I just want to hear it
Well,
one more time.
as I say, we haven't had a capacity outage due to infrastructure or a lack of planning for over 7 years that was a major outage. And like, obviously, configuration changes, bad code. No one develops bad code, right? Where I'm on the planning side of things. But from an infrastructure planning perspective and capacity perspective, we've not had outages, which are pretty good with there. So.
Yeah, one thing to add is a lot of the customers that I work with that are kind of beginning to adopt a capacity methodology or program. One of the other benefits is that many times there's no reason or benefit or actual ability for infrastructure teams to communicate with the business service or application owners, meaning that they don't really talk the same language, and because of the value that we can provide in enabling teams to provide this type of insight, it does help promote the facilitation and exchange of information, whereas before there's limited ability to do so, and many times what we're providing is the exchange of communication and making sure that the teams understand what the SLAs are, or what the other various objectives might be, and kind of just communicating can be a huge value proposition for a lot of the teams that we work with, and making sure that everyone understands what's going on.
So I mentioned red, yellow, green traffic lights.
We have one.
Yep. Yeah. Charles, can you talk to this regarding the forecast?
I know we're almost to the end, but this is just, and I think we're going to do a Q&A as well later, but this is just an example of the type of dashboard that would be part of our quarterly capacity report. And I know it may be kind of hard to see from the back, but we're just identifying, all of the applications that we're measuring on a quarterly basis and where do they fall on this chart. Hopefully most of them are in green, which is capacity is good for the next
2 years.
2 years, 24 months.
Nothing needs to be done.
I think yellow is may need attention in 12 months. Am I
between 12 and 18 months? Something needs to be done. It's going to be on the plan. It's going to be on a roadmap. That attention needs to be done.
Sure. And so red is less than 12 months, right?
Less than 12 months, yeah.
Something that we think is in trouble right now. Or maybe not in trouble right now, but 12 months. We have a long provisioning cycle, like a lot of you probably, and so that's just a sample dashboard.
And anything that's in the yellow or the red there, it has a mitigation plan that goes. We already know what the mitigation plan is going to be there. Typically, it's end-of-life hardware is one of the big issues, or the platform's about to retire. That's kind of where we get the high levels there.
Like everyone else, it's not easy to go to the business for more money when you need additional infrastructure, but it's a lot easier if you go with a long lead time so that they can plan their budgets.
So we're going to wrap up here. It's our last slide. I want to thank everyone for joining us. And as we finish up this slide, we are going to move over to the Meet the Experts session right over there for Q&A. Please join us and stick around for Charles' APM session, the success he's had with CA APM, following that in just a few minutes. But as we wrap up here, and we're a minute over, we consider Wells Fargo to be a mature capacity management customer. They've been doing it for a long time. It is a maturity process you build. There is a maturity curve you go through, and we consider them pretty mature. But just some of the successes you've had around building communication between your teams, getting commitments from management, and then delivering on those commitments back from IT, becoming predictive, asking the right questions. And automation. We talked about automating what takes months and months of data collection. That is something that a mature capacity planner develops and maintains. And ongoing planning to support successful business outcomes. That's what we're talking about here, right? We're talking about becoming predictive. And this is a customer who, I got to say it again, hasn't had a capacity-related outage in 7 years. And that's about the same time you started using the tool, right? Just going to throw that in there.
Just after.
Okay.
We started using the tool a little bit before. It took us a little while to get there.
All right. Well, I want to thank my panel here again, Charles, Chris, and John Ashby, and everyone out in the audience. Please join us right over here, right behind you, for Q&A. We can have deep dive discussions on exactly what Wells is doing with their capacity planning process. And stick around for a great APM session following this. Thank you, guys.